y'all, and welcome to PolitiBrawl. My name is Brian, and Amy Swearer takes an absolute sledgehammer and crushes the anti-Second Amendment gun-grabbing narratives.
Unfortunately, too many policymakers appear completely uninformed about basic factual realities related to guns and gun violence. Don't misunderstand me. We all want safer communities. But the characteristics distinguishing so-called assault weapons from non-assault weapons are not factors like caliber, lethality, or rate of fire. Proposals to ban scary-looking features like barrel shrouds or pistol grips are, for all intents and purposes, proposals to force law-abiding citizens to own guns that are harder for them to handle, harder to fire accurately, and more likely to cause them injuries, even when they are being used for lawful purposes. Moreover, semi-automatic rifles are not a meaningful driving factor behind rates of gun violence. 2/3 of gun deaths in this country are suicides, where the type of firearm is essentially irrelevant. With respect to gun crimes, over 90% are committed with handguns. Rifles of any kind are definitively used in only 3 to 4% of gun homicides every year, and an American citizen is 4 times as likely to be stabbed to death than they are to be shot to death with a rifle of any kind. Despite frequent claims that semi-automatic rifles are the weapon of choice for mass public shooters, in the last decade, over half of these shootings have been carried out with handguns alone.
This is an accidental L that Barack Obama actually gave us. When he changed the definition of a mass shooting, it meant that the imbalance between rifles and the handgun violence came back to the middle, because everyone thinks of the long, big, scary rifle. No one talks about the handgun problem. And what she's about to say next is just mind-blowing.
On the other hand, semi-automatic rifles like the AR-15 are so well suited for defensive action against threats in a civilian context that the Department of Homeland Security quite literally designates them as personal defense weapons for law enforcement officers. It is little wonder, then, that millions of law-abiding citizens in this country also choose these types of semi-automatic rifles as their own personal defense weapons. Far from needing to be protected from these rifles, law-abiding Americans benefit when they are allowed to defend themselves with them, particularly in situations where they are outnumbered. Just last week, a homeowner in Rockdale County, Georgia, relied on his scary-looking semi-automatic assault weapon to defend himself against 3 masked teens armed with at least 1 handgun who tried to rob him and other residents in their own front yard. Ironically, the rifle deemed an assault weapon by many in this room was used defensively to protect innocent people against assault, while the perpetrators used a non-assault weapon offensively to commit actual assault.
You know, there's an old saying, well, it's not that old, but when seconds matter, the police are minutes away. This is why this is one of the best arguments to keep the Second Amendment, because personal protection happens. The amount of times that people are robbed, the amount of times there are break-ins is huge here in the United States. And you don't know what these people intend to do to you, so that's why there are so many stand your ground laws. And again, what she's going to say next with about a story of her mom should once and for all make the easiest possible argument of why we still need the Second Amendment.
There are some here today who still genuinely don't understand why or how anyone would need such scary-looking rifles for purposes other than mass murder. And so I have permission from my mother to explain it to you by partially embarrassing her. My mother did not grow up with firearms, and they will never be her favorite thing in the world. In fact, she'd never handled a firearm until I took her to the range for the first time several years ago. Now, I love my mother, but like every other novice with a handgun, she was quite bad. I mean, she struggled to hit a stationary target from 6 yards out under ideal conditions. And then she picked up an AR-15. And I watched my mother put a fist-sized grouping of lead in the center mass of a target from 20 yards out. That is why law-abiding citizens buy millions of these firearms. When accuracy and stopping power matter, they are simply better. Americans use firearms to defend themselves between 500,000 and 2 million times every year. God forbid that my mother is ever faced with a scenario where she has to stop a threat to her life. But if she is, I hope politicians protected by professional armed security didn't strip her of the right to use the firearm she can handle most competently.
Well, that's a cute little anecdote now, isn't it? Her mother, who, when firing a handgun, couldn't hit a target at all. You put a rifle in the hand, you see the scope, all of a sudden she's making an almost perfect grouping. That is the difference between handguns, which are wildly inaccurate because of the pushback, whereas the rifle, it's more substantial. So that's a great little anecdote, but what is this really about? Why is this such a hot topic? Why is this constantly getting brought up over and over and over? Well, something I've noticed over the years, and let's start off with this premise. The mainstream media's audience is not you and me. The mainstream media's audience are typically rich white liberals, and particularly women. Sometimes stay-at-home moms, women in the office. They'll turn on the news and they'll see a terrible story where someone got into a school and did something absolutely unspeakable. And of course that's a tragedy. No one is out there saying that it isn't. But why is that front page news when there are more shootings going on everywhere else? There are more violent acts being committed everywhere else. Well, it's because these people see guns, they think they're scary, and it whips them into a frenzy. Oh, also, I'll say the quiet part out loud, because it happened in their own backyard, so to speak, because it happened to a bunch of what could potentially be their kids. Remember, rich white liberals. It hits home for them. And so it basically is a money machine for media outlets. And it's the ultimate form of ambulance chasing, and it's disgusting. But if you point this out, you're told you're a horrible person. But if you want to trigger a liberal in your life, go over to my friends at baseby.shop, link in the description below, and show the world how conservative you really are. So, to wrap this all up, clearly, we deserve the right to defend ourselves. We need to in this country. When there are roughly 2 million violent attacks every year, well, we need a deterrent. We don't know what the assailant is going to do. So to defend ourselves, we need to have the ability to own firearms, and not just little handguns and your Colt 45s. No, there are times where you need something stronger, something that's going to make it easier for you to defend yourself. And the story that she gives about her mom is a perfect example of this. Because it's easier, it makes you more accurate, and you are more likely to walk out of there alive. And the Democrats, for some insipid reason, see this as scary, they see this as a terrible thing, and want to make you less safe by removing parts of firearms that they deem objectionable, because it hurts their feelings. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed this segment here on PolitiBrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.